Just do stuff.
It's Max Lane. Yeah. Long. Your speakers might be louder. Can you hear us now?
I can.
And we can see your desktop.
You can. Okay. So yeah, Bill, I think you were asking what time zone I'm in. I'm actually about 3 miles away from Folsom Prison. So I'm just on the other side of the lake, Folsom Lake, from the prison. So, and this actually is the safest place. You think about it. Somebody breaks out of prison, they want to get as far away from the prison as humanly possible. So it's actually not a bad place to live. So, all right. So if you guys are ready, I can go ahead and get started. Is the volume okay? You guys can hear me okay?
The volume is as good as it's going to get. As good as it's going to get, yeah.
As good as it's going to get. Okay, but you can see me on your screen, on your wall, right?
Yeah, it's on your desktop.
Okay, very fine. All right, so I'll get started. All right, and of course this is the wrong slide. We're not talking about Bado and the Python SDK. We're talking about the Amazon Web Services tools for PowerShell Windows. Who am I? I'm Eric Courville. I've been in IT for about 20 years-ish. Before that, I was a line cook for 10 years. So this will be my 30th anniversary for paying income taxes. So I'm very excited for that. So hopefully you guys enjoy it. I've been active in the PowerShell community since about 2011. The history on that was, so I used to handle all the monitoring. I was a part of an Oracle database administration team managing PeopleSoft financials. And basically what we did, we managed the entire infrastructure of our ERP. So they called us DBAs, but we managed everything. Windows servers, IIS, SQL servers, J2EE servers, WebLogic, Tomcat, Apache, Tuxedo, COBOL, everything. Oracle RDBMS primarily on Solaris stacks. So I actually managed the monitoring system. So if anybody's familiar with Quest tools, I used to manage a product called Foglight. So I would monitor our entire stack. And if something didn't come out of the box, I had to write something based on whatever platform we were running on. So when it came to doing that for Windows, so I got to script, shell script and Corn Shell and C Shell, if anybody had to remember those days. So I had to do a lot of Bash, Python, Perl, all that stuff on Unix. And then when it came to Windows, I would try to do all the great stuff I could do on the Unix platform, and all I had on Windows was VBScript. So I hated it with a passion. And then when PowerShell came along, I'd tried other things like Windows Scripting Host. That helped out a bit. It actually got me into learning ASP 3.0, because that was the only way you could figure out method. A lot of the code was actually peeling off code from ASP. This wasn't even .NET. This is ASP code, and turning that into VBScript code. So if I remember, there was a site called devguru.com that I used to basically go pilfer code that was meant for ASP and basically turn that into VBScript. So writing the most ugly VBScript with it was terrible. So when PowerShell came out, I thought it was a novelty. I thought, great, okay, that's cute. It's nothing compared to what I do on Unix. So, but I kept an eye on it, and then about 2011-ish, it could have been even a bit after that. It was right about the time that Hal and John in the Power Scripting podcast had Dave Kennedy. And ironically, like the day before, I had just watched him do a DerbyCon, I think it was a DerbyCon video or something, where he just completely destroyed an Active Directory environment with PowerShell, and I was in love. I was smitten. And soon after that, around that time frame, this was the Windows 8 time frame, and so 2012 had just come out in pre-release, and they had released Invoke Web Request, and that was the missing piece, I thought. So I dove headfirst in there, and I started the Northern California PowerShell user group. I did that for a couple of years, kind of got burnt out on that because I couldn't get any help. And I was driving 100 miles to San Francisco to put on these meetings. Got an MVP award for that, and then kind of gave up on that because I couldn't put time and effort into that. So as of recently, I've been heavy in the cloud space, and specifically AWS. So hence why I'm doing this talk. But with all my activity in the cloud space, I've gotten really container space. We're using that at my company, and while we're waiting for the Elastic Kubernetes environment to go GA in AWS, we're actually in the process of building out our own Kubernetes environment internally at Verizon, and with the aim of eventually transitioning to that hosted platform. So with that, getting into the Docker space, I kind of glommed onto the local Sacramento Docker user group. They had just started, so I did a couple talks for them, and they actually asked me to become an organizer, so I do that now. So that's where I'm at. So getting started with AWS, so was there anybody, I have a feeling you guys might have a lot of Azure folks there, but is there anybody using AWS currently?
Yeah, I'm in an environment that's administrating an environment that's moving to AWS right now, actually.
Okay, fair enough. So actually, AWS, even I would say it may even be better than Azure, and probably there's Microsoft people who would tell you the same. But the AWS PowerShell commandlets have been around for a very, very long time, and they're just phenomenal. I have nothing but good stuff to say about it, which was part of my interest in using AWS. It was so easy for me because I did have the background in Azure. Being an MVP, I had the free Azure credits before my company even went to AWS. So I had a lot of experience playing with AWS or Azure. So it was very easy for me to transition into the AWS space coming from Azure. A couple links on here, and I'll provide a link to this, you guys, to my repo, but all the stuff is in the repo. So basically, they have a home page you can go to. It has links to everything you need from there, but I'll just highlight a couple of them. There's the .NET installer for .NET. I don't know what you call it anymore. The 4.5, the old school .NET. What is their name for it anyway? Big .NET? I don't know. I know they've got all these fancy names for everything, so I haven't really been paying attention. But so you can get the .NET full-on .NET installer. That actually also gives you the SDK for .NET. So if you wanted to write some custom C# code or full-on .NET code in Visual Studio, you could install that component, but it also gives you the PowerShell commandlets. Speaking of Twitch, they actually had a lady on today doing some live coding on creating Lambda functions with C#. So I believe that actually comes with that MSI package. So you get I don't know what they call it in Visual Studio, a template or a project template for Lambda. So it's pretty cool. The third link there, that's the PowerShell, the reference. I'll be bringing that up in the talk here. And then lastly, you guys probably know who Trevor Sullivan is, longtime PowerShell MVP. He's recently moved over to AWS, and that YouTube channel there, Trevor has done quite a few videos on PowerShell, and he's going to continue to do more. So I would, if I were you, I would favorite him, subscribe to him on YouTube. Sorry, let me go back in there. Okay. So, no, sorry. Okay. So some warnings here. The PowerShell module is not a substitution for configuration management. Okay. Once it's for you. So when you go and you're playing at home with the AWS, it's certainly acceptable. For a large organization, you're going to be looking at more mature tools and mature process flows for building and allocating your AWS resources. Okay, so whether that's configuration management with, Puppet, Ansible, Chef, what have you, using CloudFormation templates, using Terraform to codify your code, that is the best practice. Okay, so just you don't want to be writing custom big honkin' PowerShell scripts to build your infrastructure going forward. Certainly fine to do that, to understand and learn to poke around and prod, but definitely don't use it as your configuration management solution. So it is great for ad hoc maintenance. Okay. You can certainly integrate your commandlets into business processes. So, if you have a third party or an internal business partner that might want to interface files over to you, whereas before you might have had a Windows share and you'd open it up to them and they'd have a Windows service account or a specific account, and you would give them permissions to be able to drop files on your shared drive. Okay. Now you can just give them access to an S3 bucket, and they'll drop their files in S3, and you might have something that goes out and just periodically pulls that, or you could use Lambda, you could use step functions, but basically, so from your system, you could use something to connect to S3 and pull those files over. So it's very handy in that respect. There's so many commandlets that touch every single service, so you'll definitely be able to find things to do through PowerShell. So with that said, let's show some demos here. Does anybody have any questions before I get started?
No, we're good.
Okay. So I did mention the documentation. Everybody knows who June Blender is. I think she's spoken at your guys' user group before.
Yeah.
Okay, so June was...
By the way, we'll cover her later after the demo.
Oh yeah, June is awesome sauce. So she actually worked for AWS in their documentation team. So, you know, basically what she did at Microsoft. And, you know, the documentation's excellent. So they do a really good job. And they've open sourced their documentation much as, you know, the same way Microsoft has. So it's very cool. You know, if you find any issues with it, they'll accept pull requests. So just showing you the documentation here, though. You know, basically every single service these guys have, they've got PowerShell commandlets for it. Okay. In fact, I think I skipped over a slide here. But so the documentation's really good. So getting started, you guys will notice I am on a Mac. So AWS was very pioneering when they're very early to adopt the PowerShell core. So I don't think they have full parity. There might be a few commandlets still not ported over, but they've done a great job of porting over to .NET Core. So I'm going to do this session from my Mac, Visual Studio Code, using the AWS PowerShell core commandlets. And you can actually just, straight from their documentation page, where I pointed out where the installer, the MSI installer was, you can go drill in. There's a link there for getting to it. But it's basically in the PowerShell gallery. So you can just basically install module AWS PowerShell.core, and Bob's your uncle. You're good to go. Okay. So basically, when you get started with AWS, you'll ultimately stumble upon documentation on teaching you how to set up your environment. And basically in their documentation, the first thing they do is point out the old school way of setting up any API activity. So whether it's AWS, the PowerShell commandlets, whether it's AWS CLI, Botto 3, Java, anything. They've always pointed you to using access keys and secret keys, okay? And what I will do here is I'll bring up another terminal here. Pardon me. So I'll actually do this in the AWS CLI. I do AWS configure, I think, list. Okay, so if you look here, now what I've done is I've created a user in AWS. I've given it specific permissions to be able to do different things. In fact, I gave this thing admin access, so it has wide open access. I can pretty much do whatever I want here. And when you create that user, you have the option of having it, allowing it to generate access keys for you. Okay. So if you do that, you can basically hard code your keys somewhere and never have to authenticate again. Okay. Now be very careful when you do this. I will tell you that there's bots persistently combing through GitHub looking for access keys and secret keys. I don't have the name of the business. I should have looked at it the other day because I talked about it at the Python user group meeting. But there was a business a couple of years ago that completely got destroyed because they lost control of the keys. So someone got a hold of their keys and basically went and blew away all their resources, their dev, test, production services, and the backups. And there was nothing anybody could do about it. So if you're going to use these, be very careful. What I did this before the call here, I created a new user, specifically for this. I called it PDX user. I generated keys. I'm going to do this demo, and even though you can't read my keys, as soon as I'm done with this demo, I'm going to delete that user. So that's how militant I am with this. Okay, so try not to use them. The other alternative, what you'll find is ADFS integration. So if your company has set up ADFS single sign-on authentication to the AWS Web Console, there is documentation on authenticating through the command line. We actually use Python to do this because we don't use ADFS. We use SiteMinder. So there's some other hoops we have to jump through. So we have a Python script that will do this. So we basically authenticate our SSO endpoint and get a SAML assertion. And then we call out to AWS their STS service, and we authenticate that way. It gives us short-term access key and secret key, so it's only good for an hour. And then we update our config file, or our credentials file, okay? So that's some security, okay? I'm not hard-coding stuff. I only have it on my system for an hour. What I advise people to do is have them create an IAM role with whatever specifically you want to do in, whether it's the AWS CLI, Bot03, or PowerShell. Just create a specific role and then spin up a machine, whether it's a Windows instance or a Linux host. And when you do that and assign that role to that AWS instance, basically you don't have to hard code keys on there. They have what's called the meta URL. And so it's the 169.254.169.254 address. So they have a REST endpoint on there with a whole ton of different information on there. You can get your instance ID, your IP address. You can find out what IAM role is tied to that. You can see secured groups. So basically any attribute about that system, you can pull it out of there, including the access key and secret key. So basically when you connect with PowerShell or any of the SDKs, it will look to see if you have access keys and secret keys, and then it'll authenticate for you. So that's a much safer approach. The machine is secured in your VPC typically, right? So you don't have to worry about accidentally copying those to source control. So again, from what I found, that's probably the safest approach. So what you might have is a dedicated machine that your team might use. This is a good idea, where you guys, whether it's a Windows machine or a Linux machine, you guys can authenticate, jump on the machine, and do whatever ad hoc type stuff you want to do. Okay. So again, like I said, this is kind of an ad hoc method of interacting with AWS. Okay. Again, configuration management, cloud formation stacks are the way you should go directionally for your repetitive build processes and stuff. So, is that clear? I mean, does anybody have any questions about that? It's trust me, it's a lot simpler than Azure, I find. So. Okay, if nobody's got any questions. Okay, yeah, so let's do some demos. So again, the setup basically, if you were to set your keys, so let's say your administrator gets you, sends you the secret key and access key. This is how you would do it programmatically through the PowerShell commandlets. Okay, so you could run this set AWS credentials commandlet and pass it, your access key and secret key. Give it a profile, and you're good to go. Okay. But again, option 3 is probably the best way to go about that. So, okay. So let's do some demos here. So again, typically I use Windows machines for this, so bear with me. I'm trying something new today and doing this on my Mac, so this is my first time doing this. So let's just show you real quick some stuff here. So basically, let's give a scenario. I have new users being onboarded to the company. You might get a feed from HR that creates your Active Directory users. You could easily pull those users from Active Directory or in that same HR process, and you could pull those users over. Okay, so let's say I get a feed from HR. So I've got some new users. I have a new group I want to add to, and I think, yeah.
Can you zoom in or anything?
Come again one more time?
It's a little small in the display.
Yeah, hold on one second. Yep. How's that?
Great.
Okay.
If you can live with that, that's awesome.
I can live with that. Let me just adjust. Actually, how's that?
Good. Yeah, that's great.
Okay, cool. All right, so I got some users here. Now, if I check this out, there should be no users in that group right now. So, standard stuff. Now, I'm not going to show you some super complex here. Basically, I want to just give you different scenarios and show you different functionality just to, churn your mind, get your noodle cranking here. So I can just loop through all these users, and I can create the user, and then I'll add them to a group here. So as you see down here in the terminal, all those users just got, oh, that's too far. So all those users just got created. So if I go back up here, and I love this. Aren't we glad I don't have to use ISE for this? This is fantastic. So, okay, so here's all those users just being created. So they have AWS resource names here, ARNs. So they get created. Okay, so it's pretty standard, all right? If I wanted to destroy them, the same. So, and to be honest with you, this is a lot easier. I found, and last week I was completely engrossed in the Python side. If you don't know, the AWS CLI, the popular CLI for AWS is based on the Botto 3 Python module, okay? So I was doing demo code in Python using that Python module. But what I found, 10 times easier and more, it makes more sense, because we're using PowerShell syntax, verb-noun conventions. It just makes it so extremely easy for discovery here. So, new user, add user, remove user from group. Okay, so it was not hard at all to find what I was looking for, okay? So it's terribly easy, and I'll show the documentation here again. Give me 1 second. Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. Here, there we go. Let's say I needed to find something for Lambda. So, I could easily go down to AWS, Lambda. It's just stupid simple. Okay. Remove Lambda function. Okay. I mean, it's just, I love, this is one thing I love about PowerShell. The ease of use and the ease of, it just makes sense. And God bless Jeffrey for doing this. So I can go through and I just want to blow all those guys away. Boom. All right. So it's going to go in there. And if I run this guy again here, all right, gone. All right. So no more users. So pretty simple. Again, so that's the use case. So like I said, the ad hoc type of functionality is really big here. So let's do some stuff with S3. so, very simple. I want to just create a bucket. So, you might have some business processes where you need to dynamically create S3 buckets, right? Perfect right here. So we're just going to create that bucket. What didn't like about it? I think I already have that bucket. Let me delete it first. Okay. Yeah, I created it already. So I'm going to create the S3 bucket. So again, you might have something where you need to dynamically create an S3 bucket, put some files out there. The end user or the business pulls that. You might get a CloudWatch message saying so-and-so pulled a file from there, and you can go now and delete that, right? So you can have all these things triggering off events and stuff. So very simply here, let's say we have a CI/CD process here. So you might want to have some kind of build process. Let's say you use Visual Studio Team Services or Jenkins, Travis CI, something where your team is building out your code. You're running your tests, and your build process runs. So you might want to be able to host that code out into S3. So in this case here, I've got a simple little web application here. So I'm going to push this code out to S3. So doing that, then anytime I build a new web server, I can have it just easily pull from S3 and deploy the code out to any new EC2 instances I choose. Okay, so I think this will work. All right, so if I just run this guy here, what is your problem? Yeah, I'm sorry. I always do this. Sorry. Oh, that's right, because this is, sorry. Yeah. Actually. So this is the problem of cross-platform. I totally forgot this demo was for Windows, and now I'm on a Mac, so I've got to just gotta fix this real quick. Should be pretty simple fix. Okay, so you still don't like that. What was your problem? It does not exist. What are you talking about? Oh, yes, see, thank you. PowerShell demo. We're almost there. PowerShell PS demo. Is it PS_demo? Sorry. Okay. So that has run successfully, thank God. Can I bring a browser window over here? No. Sorry, this is fighting with me. Multi-windows here are not my friend. I'm just going to open up another console here. So if I drill into S3 now, there we go. Okay, so I should have that new bucket, PDX user group demo, and now I've got that PHP page out there. Okay. So, you can plug this into your CI/CD pipeline as a deployment method. Okay, so maybe you just want to stash that code out there after you build it, and then later down the road, when you build a new Linux or Windows machine, you can then just fetch that from S3 and deploy it. Okay, make sense? Okay, I can list those objects in S3. So right now we only have that PHP page. I got the details on it there. So a couple things else I wanted to show you here. So pretty standard here. You can also run Python code very easily in your PowerShell scripts. You can also, if need be, and I have a colleague who does this because she's more comfortable with the AWS CLI. Her code is completely interlaced with the AWS CLI and the PowerShell commandlets. Because she has adopted everything I've thrown at her, I don't give her crap about it. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to tease you about this. So I'd leave her be, but it works completely fine, no issues. But one thing I wanted to mention, AWS CLI has one feature that I have not found parity with in PowerShell commandlets, and that is the sync function for S3. So, let's say I update this PHP page. I can go in here and update this PHP page and say, let's just say, hello, Portland. Okay. So basically, I would have to figure out, has this been updated, and then do another copy back out there. But with the sync parameter for the AWS CLI, it can actually, I think this will run like this. Yeah. Okay. So basically, it'll synchronize everything. Okay. And now what happened was, I kind of jacked this up, which is fine. This is a good demo though. So now it's just throwing everything out there. But here, let me do this again. Is it done yet? No, it's still going. It's all right. Let's add in this guy. Okay. Which is cool. That's fine. No problem at all. So let's go back to did this just update? No, we should see all these different files in here. And I don't think that's been updated. So if I go back here and let me change this path. Actually, let's go to the www directory. Okay. So now, if I run this, it'll be much better. So now it's just going to push those files. So it just pushed one file, okay? Yes. No, did it do both? Okay, so it did both. Now let me make another one. And this time I mean it. Save that guy. Let's run this again, and yeah, okay. So it was smart enough not to push that the JavaScript out. It basically recognized there's been an update in the index.php. I just want to sync that out. So very good feature. Again, I have not found parity in PowerShell for that. So I wanted to. One more time.
It seems very similar to robocopy functionality. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it's pretty handy. So the point here is don't be afraid to, mix and mingle stuff. Like I told you, my colleague, she likes to do this. So, if you don't find something in PowerShell, don't be afraid to throw a little Python in there if you've got it installed. So if you're using cross-platform, you more than likely do. So. And then I'm just going to go delete this guy. So you cannot delete an S3 bucket that has stuff in it. You have to specifically say delete the contents, and then you can delete this guy. So let's go ahead and run this guy. And we should now see this bucket should be deleted. Okay, so that's gone. So pretty straightforward. Okay, another one I wanted to show you here. So again, with the CI/CD type stuff. Now, what I do, what we do at my company, we don't let people build systems in the console. Okay, so we've got thousands of people using AWS, whether they're creating Lambda jobs, S3 buckets, RDS instances, EC2 instances. We have so many people that for security reasons, we kind of have to, be very guarded and gated on what people can do in there, or else it would just be mayhem. So we use Jenkins, and we have custom Jenkins plugins that use Ansible to basically run CloudFormation templates. So if you wanted to build EC2 instances, RDS instances, S3 buckets, what have you, elastic file systems, and we also mandate that everything be encrypted. Okay. We've had trouble with people losing our data recently, so we're very militant now about encrypting everything. So communication between load balancers, middle tier, backend services, all have to be encrypted. All the disks at rest have to be encrypted. Just everything. I mean, we're just going encryption crazy. So we have to do this through Jenkins. We build automation for that. So we have to codify all our stuff in CloudFormation templates. Now we're using Ansible to run those, but if you didn't use Ansible or you hadn't chosen a configuration management tool, shame on you. But I guess there's still people out there who haven't done that. In that case, we can basically run our CloudFormation stack. So in this case, I could have a Jenkins server that just, whether it's Windows or Unix, as long as I had this script out there, I could pass their CloudFormation template as a parameter to the script here. So in this case, I'm just going to create this guy. So, and someone totally forgot to remind me not to delete the S3 bucket. So I got to go back there and create that bucket real quick. So bear with me for 1 second. Interacting with this guy. So we need to recreate this guy here. Okay, and then I need to stick a file out there. So write object here. So not this one. We want to put, let's see here. Okay, new, wait, which one was it? We want the new S3 bucket.json. Okay. Okay, very fine. All right. So we want the new underscore S3 bucket JSON. Okay. All right. So let me run this guy. So this is going to push that JSON file out there. I keep forgetting. So let's see if our buckets come back here. Okay, so we have our bucket, we have our JSON file out there. So with the CloudFormation stack here, basically in this case, and I like this pattern, putting these files out. I mean, you could certainly copy them locally and run this locally, but I like the idea of pushing these JSON files out to S3 and pulling them from S3. So in this case, I want to create a new stack. Okay, so that's if you use CloudFormation, if you're familiar with CloudFormation, when you build infrastructure from CloudFormation, it creates it as a stack in CloudFormation. So that's that verbiage. So in this case here, we're going to create a new stack, and it's basically going to create a new S3 bucket. So here's my JSON. So if you guys are familiar with ARM templating, it's basically the same crap. You know, you got parameters. It's got a version, right? You got parameters. You got resources. The documentation's pretty solid here as well. So anything you need to build through CloudFormation, if you just search AWS CloudFormation and EC2 or S3, it will take you to the section that describes the resources and what properties and parameters you need to give it to be able to use it in CloudFormation. So in this case, we're going to pass it a couple parameters. We're going to give it a bucket name and a access control list. Then you just basically pass that to your resource, and then it can spit out output that you can use later down the road. So if it created, let's say we created an EC2 instance, and when you created the EC2 instance, you wanted to be able to get that EC2 instance ID, you would have it spit it out in the outputs, okay? And I think ARM does something similar as well. Okay, so that's the file we put out there. So if we run this guy now, Gods be good here. I think we should have a new S3 bucket. So I'm going to run this guy. Okay. Didn't barf. Okay, so it looks like it ran. Okay. So if I go back to the S3. Okay, so I've got this organic IT-test here. Okay. And if I go out to CloudFormation, you'll see that that stack has been created. Okay. So nice thing about CloudFormation templates, you basically get to see what was run. You know, you get to see the parameters that were passed. This is actually pretty helpful. You know, if CloudFormation templates aren't your thing, in fact, today I helped a colleague build an RDS instance where we just basically hunted through the existing stacks in AWS and found somebody who had built an RDS instance, and we were able to basically copy the template they ran and just modify it for our purposes. So pretty handy. So that's that. So now if one thing you'll notice here though, and this is very good to highlight here, you notice that this guy is public, okay? And if you guys have been watching the news, you know that public S3 buckets are a big problem for lots of different people. So we have figured that out and said, holy crap, I just created an S3 bucket and it's got public access here. So what we can do, we can, so that was new CloudFormation stack. Now we can run the update CloudFormation stack. So in this case, I want it to update that existing stack. So instead of having public read, I want it to be private. So I can just easily come back through here. So you could have a job running, so basically, let me show the, how are we doing on time, you guys?
Okay. Yeah, we're fine.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay. All right. Let me show you something real quick here. So if you guys are familiar with Cloud, what is it, Cloud Watch? What do we call this guy? These names are so convoluted. So basically, when that stack gets created, let me go into logs here. Okay, it didn't. But you could actually have logging update. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. These are just my AWS EC2 logs. You can set up logging, and I'm just not finding it. I don't know offhand where to find that. You could have something trigger that looks for public S3 buckets, right? And you could easily have some job going through and just routinely doing this, and you can just go and update the stack, okay? So in this case, basically, I'm just going to go in and run this guy here. Here's our output. So very simply, this guy just ran, and it has updated our stack here. So if we go back here, information. So our stack has an update in progress, okay? And if we go and look at S3 now, we should see this guy is not public, okay? So we've saved ourselves. Our information hasn't leaked. Thank God I'm not going to be in Ars Technica. Okay. Cool. So here's the coup de grace script here. So the one thing that really got me interested in the AWS CLI was, I had been getting into I've been in configuration management for a while. I hadn't yet used Ansible to build a machine. I hadn't really gotten into CloudFormation templating yet. So basically, I wanted to have the definitive script to basically create a new EC2 instance. To be honest with you, it's a little convoluted, and that's why I kind of, tell people to shy away from it. You don't really want to do that. There's definitely better ways of doing this. But for S's and G's, we can go through and we can just create a new instance in AWS. And I'll kind of walk you through the different things you got to do to get this, okay? First thing, I've got to set a variable and get my my VPC that I'm running in, okay? Virtual Private Cloud. And then I can go and create security groups. So these are our firewall rules, our access rules, to be able to reach our instances. Now, I've already got these created, and I don't want to delete them, so I'll just walk you through here. So basically, I can define, I can create the new group, all right? So in this case, I'm going to call this guy Linux Web Server. So I'm going to build a Linux machine here, and I need to be able to, it's going to run, let's say I'm building the Linux machine that my PHP page was going to push to. So I pushed my PHP code out to S3. Now I want to build that Linux instance, and then I can copy over my PHP, and I'm off to the races. I'm good to go. So basically, I need to create those security groups. So I've got the security group now, but now I have to give it ingress, egress permissions, okay? So I need to be able to SSH to this guy. So what you'll find is you need to create these new objects, and there's a handful of them. And the AWS data model is very good. I like the way that it's designed. And so in this case, I need to create a new object, and it's of type IP permissions, okay? So I'm going to define the first one, IP1. And basically, I tell it I need TCP port 22. Okay, that's my SSH port. Okay, and I'm going to give it a CIDR address so everybody can SSH to it. You could add different ranges here if you had to have different IP ranges. Okay, so it's flexible in that way. So in this case, so I'm doing two of them. I'm creating two different rules for this security group. I should be able to SSH to it, and anybody should be able to hit port 80 on this guy. Then I bind that to the security group I just created, and this is how you do that. So you create these couple of different objects here, and then bind it to the security group you just created. Okay. And then let's see here. Okay, I'll have to do this manually. So in this case, I create the security group. I get the security group. I update a couple variables here, and now I move on to the storage on the EC2 instance. So much in the same way I had to, create these custom objects to bind to the security group, I've got to do the same thing here for the EBS storage. So EBS in AWS is the elastic block storage devices. So these are the mount points you mount to your EC2 instances. So in this case, I'm going to create a new volume, define it as model.ebs block device. I'm going to make it 20 gigs. It's got the type. Delete on termination, I'm going to set that to true. So when I terminate this instance, it'll delete this. By default, I believe EBS volumes will not be set to delete. So that's one thing you'll find in AWS. If you want to save cost, keep a very good close eye on your EBS volumes. Because even if you delete your instance, in some cases, additional volumes you add to your instance might not get deleted by default. So you might have a lot of orphan EBS volumes sitting out there taking up costs. So keep that in mind. Okay. So I create that volume object here, and then I'm going to create a block device mapping object. Okay. And then I give it a device name, and I basically take that EBS block device and map that here. So there's a property in that block device mapping object where you can map that volume you just created. Okay. So that gives me the device mapping. Okay. Another thing I want to do before then, I'm going to create a hash table with my tags. Okay. And if you haven't figured this out, if you're in Azure, I'm sure it's the same scenario. Tag the living crap out of everything you do in the cloud. You will thank yourself later down the road. It just tag everything. Tags are your friend. Okay. So I go and create that hash table with the tags here. Okay. I can use user data. I know Azure has something. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but basically, this is the section that allows you to pass commands to your machine when it boots up. Okay. Somebody help me out. What's the parallel in Azure for this? I know the Chef stuff has something for this as well. Yes, thank you. Okay, so the same thing here. In this case, though, there's something wonky. I haven't figured it out, and I've still yet to come back to it. Just doing this bash stuff for a Linux machine in PowerShell, it didn't work for me, so I haven't touched it and come back to it. So shame on me. Sorry about that. That's my fault. And then basically I specify a specific AMI I want to use here. And then, cool, I can finally actually spin up my new instance. So new EC2 instance, I pass it this AMI ID. I have to specify a PEM key so that I can connect to the Windows machine or the EC2 instance. Specify an instance type, and this min count, max count. So basically, I'm not really creating a new EC2 instance. I'm creating a new AWS reservation. So when you go through the AWS console to spin up an EC2 instance, you're basically creating a reservation, and you can have it spin up n number of, well, it's not really n number. It just, depending on what your max availability is, you can spin up many. It's a many to one relationship. So you can have many instances to a reservation. So that's what those parameters are for. So you can say, give me a minimum of 3, and if you can give me 5 or 6 or 10 instances, give that to me, right? So that's basically what that's saying there. I'm passing a security group, okay? So that security group I created up here, and I got this updated security group, which basically gave me the group ID, right? So I can pass it to this guy. And then I pass that block device mapping. And then in this case, I'm giving it the instance profile name. So remember I mentioned earlier about giving IAM rolled to your EC2 instance. That's basically what I'm doing here. And then, so what's going to happen is that's going to run. And then what you want to do, and depending on what your organization and your security compliance people decide to do, basically what we did when we first allowed people to start building EC2 instances, we mandated you have to have these certain tags or we'll immediately delete your EC2 instance. So stuff like what department you're in, your application name, what VP owns this. So there were certain tags that we mandated people use. And if you didn't build it, initially when they did it, they gave you like 20 seconds after you built your machine to go real quickly into the tag section and add your tags. Now they don't even do that. They wouldn't let you do that. They would just immediately delete the instance if you didn't have tags. So that's why now we don't even let people go into the console and build stuff. So we don't have that problem anymore. But I'm just pointing that out because you're going to build. So the one weird thing and kind of a knock to this commandlet specifically, I feel that they should have let you pass. They should have combined the new EC2 tag into the new EC2 instance. So you should have been able to pass the hash table of tags into that commandlet, and then it would have done everything in one fell swoop. You wouldn't have to worry about that. So basically what you do is just immediately you can just highlight all this code and run it concurrently. So basically it'll create the instance and then immediately apply the tags to it. Okay. Now, let's see here. Actually, I don't want that. I'm going to do this. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, actually, I'm going to see if I can get that group ID real quick. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to use the GUI. Sorry. Instead of trying to find the commandlet, I'm just going to get the security group. And I want this guy here. So I'm going to just hard code this guy. All right. So because I've already created that group, I don't want to rerun that. So I'm going to just do this here. Okay, I'm just going to give that a security group. Okay, so I'm going to come up here and I'm going to create these two objects. All right, I'm going to grab the tags here. Oh, sorry. Okay, and I think this is all I should need. Actually, let me get rid of this guy. Alright, and then I can run this. Okay, so now I should be able to do what failed. Okay, so yeah, give me 1 second. There's a commandlet to get the EC2 instance, but I'm gonna be lazy again here. Sorry. And let's just go to instances, launch instance, and I'll just copy this guy. So I just want the Linux instance there. Okay, let me update this here. Oh, no problem. Oh, I think I deleted that key. Give me a break. 1 second. Demos. See, this is another thing, Bill, that's hard about Twitch. Is when you fall on your face on demos and stuff like that, you're kind of like, oh no, you feel really bad.
Demo that everybody, man.
It happens to everybody, doesn't it, though?
It's just interesting. It makes me start on what kind of thing our UK group is going through, creating they had an AWS instance of a development environment, and now they're trying to do it in Azure. I'm not sure why, because it was just fine at AWS, but this looks similar to what they did going through. I mean, I can provide
your guys' audio just your audio is really bad. I can't understand a word you guys are saying. Sorry.
Yeah, so for one of my customers, we they do basically do all the traffic planning for Los Angeles. And they have these big modeling servers that basically have to spin up and run. So for the longest time, we come in, and I was like a good engineer, a lazy engineer. So I came out and looked at this, and they were basically spinning up 100 of these like Excel for like $20 an hour instances, and just leaving them running. And they're like, oh, we go out there and we get them, we do them. So using the PowerShell, because I've been doing PowerShell for a long time, and so I just came in, helped them out. Basically, we put together a script for them that uses these APIs to, when they have a job they need to run, I run it in Azure Functions just to easy to run that in Azure as well. Basically, it's just an Azure function that they go to. They upload the core part of their model, which is basically like the run set. All they do is upload a file, and it in Azure Functions calls it up, spins up the EC2 instance for their template, loads it up, runs the model, and all done, copies it off to S3 bucket, and shuts down. Yeah. And now they have that, they cut their AWS bill in like 85%. So it paid for itself. So that's like one example. Like they do a very good job with this. Again, not PowerShell core compatible, which is awesome. And there's a lot of power here that you can do. And I think again, with PowerShell, if you want to use the AWS CLI, if you want to throw in some .NET, if you want to optimize something, it's so flexible. Sure. Sorry, I didn't want to overrun the. There's another.
No worries. Okay, so this guy finished here. So all right, so now I can grab the EC2 instance, and this is a good demo here. So what you're going to find with the AWS PowerShell objects, they're very nested. Okay, so that you got to be very careful about this, and sometimes it gets to be a bit cumbersome to drill down and get the information and iterate through these guys. You got to use filter syntax, which basically they ported over the functionality of the Python functionality. So, if I wanted to search for something, if I wanted to search for a nested tag, I might use the filter command. In fact, a lot of the documentation recommends you do that. But if I look in here, so if I let me do this. So let me get that instance, and if I so just do a get member on this guy. It brings me back this object, and it's actually reservation. Okay, so you'll find the model.reservation object here. So this gives me the top level. It gives me the reservation ID and the instances, and that instances is it's an array. Okay, so I can go down and see the instances. Okay, and I could have n number of instances in here. So again, it's really the daisy chaining of objects, the dot notation fun. Okay, so if I want to get the instance ID for the instance I just spun up, I have to drill down 3 levels to get the actual instance ID, right? I can get member on that instance here, and now I'll see all the different data about that guy, right? So I've got a tags property is a system.collection of tags. So if I come here and do .tags, you know, I've got these different tags, right? So there's the key value pairs of the tags. So if you were going to search for an instance by a tag, it's not as easy as just, you know, where tag equals such and such, tag.key equals this or that. I mean, you can do it, but it gets to be very cumbersome. So AWS actually, in certain cases, because that stuff is so nested, they actually recommend here, let me go to EC2, get EC2 Instance. Let's just go. So here's their filter parameter. And basically, here are the different values you can filter on. Okay. It's a little tedious. I'll tell you that. It can be a little tedious. But so if you look here, there's. So they're going to filter on a VPC ID here, a specific VPC ID, and a specific subnet ID, right? So they're looking for these guys in this VPC on these subnets, okay? That's how they're filtering this guy. Another example? No, okay. But you'll find any documentation you look, lots of times their documentation, you'll find a lot of stuff on filtering. Okay, and forgot to even look. Here's our new instance that we created. Okay. So it's got our security group here that has the inbound port 20, port 80. Okay. On those 2 different data ranges. And that's it. So, you know, lots of different uses, lots of different use cases, and, you know, much the same way Azure, you're not really building a lot of long-term stuff with it. It's a lot of ad hoc functionality that DevOps folks, you know, use. So that's basically it. I'll leave the last section for questions.
Anybody questions?
And just so you know, your audio was really bad, so if you do have questions,
Yours wasn't very good either. We're questions right now. Where do you see our setup? Can you see our setup at all? We got the amplifier. Are you
really
getting in the video?
I can see your video. Yeah. Actually, let me stop sharing.
That's close in the middle of the table so your audio comes from. Okay, so I want to say thanks to Eric for doing the demo and providing the presentation. Before we cut off the recording, I want to say thanks to our sponsors, to Viewpoint, for providing the venue, and for Columbia for providing the recording resources. and to Safety and Software for providing the food and food pointing in for the drinks, by the way. We're going to go ahead and cut off the recording, and we're going to start some of the meat space stuff for the guys that are here. Eric, are you still there, by the way?
Yeah, I am. And just one last pitch. If you guys could help me out, check me out on twitch.tv/organicit. Give me a follow. And
does that have the underscore at the beginning or not?
I'm sorry, one more time?
The Organic IT on Twitch, does that have the underscore at the beginning?
No, that the only reason that's the case is because some dumb hippie abandoned their Twitter account over like 10 years ago, right before I took that, so I could never get it. I'm still waiting for that person to kill that ID. So no, Twitter's the only one that I have to do that. So yeah.
All right. So either way, hey, follow Organic IT, Eric Courville on Twitter. Follow him on Twitch. Give him a shout out. If you didn't show up early enough, he recommended Phoenix Project Revisited. You can get it free on Audible. Is that what you said it was?
Yeah. If you don't have Audible, I think they'll let you take that one for free. So.
Yeah.
But it's $20 otherwise, and it's well worth the investment.
I honestly don't know what the revisited part is. I haven't read it.
What's the revisited part of the Phoenix Project?
So basically the authors go through and discuss the motivation, their inspiration, and all the different resources they pulled from. So basically, if you know who Gene Kim is and John Willis, they basically talk about Deming, his influences, Toyota Kata, the Andon course, so all the things Jeffrey Snover talks about passively, and all the DevOps gurus. So yeah.
So Eric, right about now, we're going to go ahead and cut off the recording. You're welcome to listen as long as you like.
I got to go chase kids around. My wife is going to get mad at me, but thanks you guys.